To start off, do you remember your first guitar?
Acoustic or electric?
Oh, either.
My first acoustic guitar I bought was, you wouldn't know what this is, but green stamps.
Oh, yes.
When your parents used to buy food at the grocery store or get gas, they would get these little stamps that you put in a book.
Mm-hmm.
And when you got a book, then you could go buy things with it. And I had about 5 books of stamps that I put together, and I went and got a K-A-Y-E acoustic guitar. God, I think I was probably 12 maybe. And my first electric guitar was a Les Paul Jr. that I bought in 1968 from a friend who was selling it to buy another guitar.
Mm-hmm.
And that was before I had an amp, but I knew that I didn't want to play acoustic guitar for the rest of my life because it was too, I don't know, restraining or something. So I knew I wanted to get feedback and flail around the stage. So
right. Yeah. So when you did start getting serious about music as a career option, who were the first guitar players that really inspired you?
I would have to say Freddie King and Jeff Beck. All the guys I was hanging out with at the time were into the Yardbirds and the Who and the Kinks and the Stones, and then just slightly later than that, I got heavily into the Blues Breakers. That's when I discovered Peter Green and not so much Clapton. I mean, Cream was big at the time, so we were all into Cream and Hendrix and stuff. But as far as influences, I would have to say Peter Green and I don't know really. It probably BB to some extent. Albert Collins later on.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly blues guys, mostly white blues guys, English guys. What can I say?
Talk about your days with the Textones. How do you look back on that time now in terms of your growth as a musician?
Oh, it was a fantastic bunch of friends. We were all good mates, and we really got along well. George Callens, when he joined the band, he and I had been friends from Texas, and we played in a band together in Texas, and I just knew when Kathy left the band, and I went on three-piece for a while with the original bass player and drummer, Mark Cuff and Dave Provost. We were three-piece for a while. It was kind of like crazy power trio, Marshall stack, feedback, 12-string Rickenbacker assault. So, and then suddenly I realized, well, maybe it'd be nice if I was able to sing more and sort of concentrate less on playing lead and rhythm and singing, and have somebody to carry the weight a bit with me, so I could be a bit more of a front person. And that's when I called my buddy George in San Antonio, and I said, "Would you come out and play in my band with me?" and he came out and added quite a bit to the show. So then we switched rhythm sections to Phil Seymour and Joe Reed, and that pretty much became the Textones at that point for the first studio album that we did and tour and all that. So
the band had a terrific cult following, but never really extended beyond that. Was that a disappointment to you now looking back?
Oh, I don't have any regrets. I would like to have had the label maybe appreciate us a bit more. Unfortunately, when our record came out, it was the same year that Sting's first solo album came out, same time, and that was their priority. It was A&M, and they were really keen on promoting him. And we would get into towns and have like a half-page article in the music section, and there wouldn't be any records anywhere. And we'd pull into a radio station and do a little on air interview, and there wouldn't be any records to give away because A&M didn't ship them. That kind of thing. Yeah, that disappointed me.
Yeah.
But not anything that the band did disappointed me. I mean, we were having a ball. We were having a great time, and we did a tour of Europe, and then came back. Did six weeks in Europe, and then came back to the U.S. and did like 3 or 4 weeks here. And we were in the middle of a tour and just having a ball, and then the label just kind of stopped promoting us. So they never really did promote us. We were doing all of our own promotion, and we had a PR firm that was just going to town, and they loved the whole story that the bunch of us had, and they were really doing their job. It's just the label wasn't doing their job. So, but that's a million stories in the city like that, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
When you left Texas and made the move west, how welcoming did you find the musical community there? Was it easy to adapt?
L.A. at the time was at a stage where you really couldn't get any live gigs going here, because the only really big, the Whiskey, the Starwood, the Roxy, all those places were booking only roadshow acts, people who already had record deals and were touring. There wasn't like a burgeoning club scene here yet, and maybe 1 or 2 places were sort of just starting to happen as far as booking local talent that was trying to get discovered or get any kind of exposure. So, no, it was kind of hard. When Kathy and I moved out here together, Kathy Valentine, that is, when I moved out here with her, it was just the two of us, and we were looking for a rhythm section, and it was a little hard to get people to take us seriously because we were women. And we did hook up with a couple of people to play with, and who took us seriously, and we had a great little band for a while. Just that she had her style, I had my style, and there was a little bit of a crossover there, but it sort of eventually went its separate ways. And then she joined the Go-Go's, of course, and the rest is history for her. So we're pretty much we're still pals and stuff, but musically we weren't exactly going the same route. But L.A. was very tough to get gigs. I remember going around just trying to take our demo tape around that we had recorded, and just nobody would answer our phone calls or keep meetings or anything. And then we finally hooked up with Saul Davis through a happenstance in front of a club where the club owner was supposed to meet us and then wouldn't come out. I don't know what he was afraid of. We had horns or something. I don't know, but he wouldn't come out. So we kind of, after breaking up the place a little bit, kind of went outside and were standing out on the curb yelling and screaming, and Saul walked up and says, "Hey, what's all the commotion?" And that's how we met him. So he listened to the demo, and he liked a couple songs on it, one of which was one of Kathy's songs that the Go-Go's later recorded, and Phil Seymour recorded on his first solo album. And we sort of found ourselves a manager and an advocate who could go and pitch us. So we didn't have to try to pitch ourselves. But it was hard at first.
Yeah. Were you pretty sure exactly what you wanted to do with the next stage of your career after the Textones ended?
Well, the Textones didn't really end on a level of we all quit. It was at one point Phil Seymour was the drummer for the band, and he came down with lymphoma and fought it for about 10 years, and then finally, unfortunately, succumbed to lymphoma. And when he found out he was sick, we were on the road in Europe, and when we got back to America, it started getting worse and worse. Of course, he never missed a beat or missed a song. I mean, he was always there. And then when we got back to L.A., he started getting sicker and sicker, and we sort of had to replace him, unfortunately, with Rick Himmert, who was also coincidentally from Tulsa, another Tulsa drummer. And then we made another record with EMI and with Rick on drums. And then I got sick, and I came down with diabetes in 1987 and had to take quite a bit of time off. Actually, it took me about 6 months to kind of get back on my feet. And at that point, everybody kind of decided to either play with other groups or basically have families or, move back to England, like Joe moved back to England. And and Tom had 5 children, and it sort of changed involuntarily. We didn't really disband. We just kind of, everybody was kind of waiting for me to pick up the reins, and I was a little under the weather. So, and when I got back on my feet, I had an offer to do a record in Sweden with a Swedish label, and they flew me over there with George Callens from the Textones, and we went over, the two of us, and we recorded with a Swedish band called Wilmer X, who actually quite popular through the years, have been really very popular in Sweden. So that was kind of how it happened. You know, unfortunately, life throws you a curve now and then.
Reading a lot of articles through the years about your music, I often see journalists come up with comparisons to the likes of Lucinda Williams and Bonnie Raitt. Did those type of comparisons sit okay with you?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, if somebody wants to think that, I don't see the comparison musically to Lucinda Williams or Bonnie Raitt, either one, because that's not where I'm coming from. I think another viewpoint. I never really wanted to be a singer-songwriter. I wanted to be a rock guitarist in a rock band. Singer-songwriter is not something I'm very comfortable with, and I don't play acoustic guitar worth a poot. So I'm not one of those people that's real comfortable getting up and doing that. Or Bonnie Raitt just I think the only thing we really have in common is we're both women. You know. I mean, that's about it. I mean, she's terrific. She does what she does very well. It's just not. She kind of comes from a more, I would say, a blues rootsier kind of sound, more of a Sippy Wallace kind of meets. I won't say Rycooter because that's not a good enough comparison, but. She has more of a. She's always been heavily into the real authentic blues, but she sort of combined it with that Little Feat kind of thing, you know. And that's not really. That's not comfortable for me. I'm not a player like that. I've always been into the Stones and sort of thrash and bash and the Who and. You know, but if they want to say that, that's great because you know that's always good company to be in.
I think you can put it down to lazy journalism. I think.
Yeah, it could be.
As you said, you're both women, so it's just an easy comparison to
make. I would probably be a little more comfortable with comparisons to more of a Tom Petty meets the Stones because that's kind of more what it is, and certainly the early Textones with Kathy. That was total, you know, punk new wave, grabbing up as much as we could of the Stones and Mott the Hoople and everybody else we could drag along, the Kinks and the Yardbirds and everything else. Nick Lowe, Dave Edmunds. That's the stuff Kathy and I were really heavily into at the time in '77, '78 when we formed the first band we had together, the Violators, in Austin. And after that, it kind of went to harkening back to the Mersey beat sound. When Kathy left and George came on, we were doing a lot of 12-string stuff, a lot of Searchers, kind of more rock pop with sax, you know, that sort of sound, and Hammond organ. So it really wasn't. I don't know. It's kind of hard to say. But certainly the sound evolved from one thing to another, but I don't think I ever really lost my fondness for the Stones or Chuck Berry or my blues roots, you know, which is I'm always, you know, loving to throw in a 1-4-5 when I can, so you know, or Chuck Berry riffs and stuff like that.
Now, speaking of the Stones, someone you've worked with extensively through the years is Mick Taylor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How did you first come across Mick?
Well, that was actually, as I said, I was a big Blues Breakers fan, so I had all those records, you know, Hard Road and Blues from Laurel Canyon. I was always into Mayall. Mayall was always one of my favorites. But I guess really the Bob Dylan album Infidels that Mick played on, I pantomimed his guitar solo in the video, the Bob Dylan video of Sweetheart Like You,
That's
the first Bob Dylan video ever. And I just was selected to be in the band by one of Bob's close friends who was trying to put the band together for the video, and that's how I met him. And and Mick was unavailable for the video. Let's just put it that way, because he was off doing some other stuff and play with Mayall and different Mayall's reunion band. And I guess I can't remember exactly what Gene Clark and I were going to do a second studio album after we did the So Rebellious a Lover album that came out in '86. We were going to do another record together, and we were toying with the idea of different guitar players, and Saul had run across Mick's manager at the time, who was Johnny Winter's guy that was managing Mick at the time. And we sent him some material, and he really liked it, and he said, yeah, I'd love to do this record. And unfortunately, at the time, I think Gene was doing the Byrds reunion tour to try to reclaim the name of the Byrds from Roger and David and Chris, and decided he was going to go out and do that tour, and he didn't have time to make another studio album until later. In the meantime, Mick Taylor said, well, do you have anything else that you want me to play on? So Saul got this idea that maybe we should just form do a show at the Roxy and record it, and for a live album. And that's what we did. We just sent him a proposal and said, would you like to come out and play on this? And he said, yeah. And so we picked songs that we wanted him to play on, and some of my originals, some of his, and some Stone stuff, and sent him a plane ticket, and he came out, and we rehearsed a couple of days and went and played one warm-up show in the Roxy, and the rest is on vinyl. Or actually, was it on vinyl? Yeah, it was on vinyl.
Yeah.
And then we just kind of kept working together through the years. He seemed to like working with us, and certainly we love him, so no problem there.
Yeah. Now, is that right? I think I read that you were given Clean Cut Kid by Bob Dylan as a token of thanks for your appearance.
I was.
Yeah.
I was. Yeah. Yeah. And at the time, he had recorded it with Sly and Robbie for Infidels, but he didn't put it on the album, and then he re-recorded it with for Empire Burlesque. But in the meantime, we got it, and at the time it didn't have a bridge, and I said, well, do you mind if I put a musical bridge in it? And he says, well, if you write, if you get me something, I'll write words over it. So I wrote the music. Of course, when you write with Bob Dylan, you pretty much don't get credit for it, which is okay. Believe me, it's fine. Yeah. And he was in Paris on the road. Funnily enough, I think he was on the road with Mick Taylor and McLagan and trying to remember who, Colin Allen or somebody else was. I can't remember Colin Allen. Yeah, Colin Allen, I think, was in the band, and with Greg Sutton, who also has played with me off and on through the years. And they were doing a tour of Europe, and he called from Paris, and I played him the track, and I said, here's the track. You want to give me the words? And he gave me the words over the phone, and we recorded the bridge. So,
wow.
But, it was a quite unique experience working with Bob Dylan. He's an interesting guy. Very, very generous, though. Very generous.
Now, you mentioned Gene Clark, who I always felt was an underappreciated artist, never probably received his due recognition. What was he like to work with?
He was a prince. He was just a real, a real brilliant sweetheart of a guy. Unfortunately, as you know, people who are brilliant often have the reasons that their brilliance is exhibited is due to very often problems, and Gene had some problems. He had some emotional problems that always haunted him, but every time I ever worked with Gene, he was nothing but the best. I mean, he was never anything but his best. There were one or two times when I think physical illness got in his way. When we were cutting So Rebellious a Lover and he had to do vocals, he was having dental problems. I mean, serious dental problems. And You can almost hear that in some of the vocals that he's having trouble with his teeth. But he was just wonderful, wonderful. And every time he opened his mouth, this beautiful, soulful, weary voice came out. And it was just great. Really great. I miss him. It's hard to listen to his music even to this day, because sometimes when I'm in the car and I'm playing something, and sometimes it's just too close, you know. It surrounds you, and you realize he's gone, and you go, why is he gone? How can he be gone, you know? But he's been gone a long time, but it still seems like it was just yesterday. I don't know.
Now, you've been involved in a bit of production work in recent times. Is that something you've had a long time interest in?
Actually, it came about in about 1998 or 99, I think, or 98. I think I did a record with, no, actually before that, a little before that. I did a record with Mare Winningham, the actress, and she's got a wonderful voice, and she's a great player and beautiful songwriter, and went to one of her gigs and ran into her just sort of backstage, and before I could get it out of my mouth what a great set she did, she said, "Oh, I was such a Textones fan. I love your band." And so we sort of struck up a mutual admiration society, and she had all this great songs she was going to record, and I just said, "Well, I'd love to produce you." And I don't know, I guess maybe the fewer and far between live gigs that were coming my way sort of took me by surprise, and I wanted to always play live and continue recording, and there weren't a lot of offers out there, so the next best thing is working, you know, with other artists. And I was producing somebody today, actually. We just finished up about 6:30 in the studio, so I'm still working at it. I've produced everything from jazz to standards to the guy from the Phantom of the Opera. I produced a record for him.
Wow.
And I mean, it's sort of, some of the stuff is work for hire. You get hired by somebody who's got a company that says, you know, we need somebody to produce this, and will you do it? And you go, yeah. But other things have just been real labor of love, you know, for me. And I'm real glad to be asked to do anything nowadays, because there's so much being recorded out there at home and in people's home studios, and there's just not a lot of room anymore for new product. There's so much being recorded, and I'm glad that I'm able to do it. Glad that I'm being asked to do it. So I don't know what to say. I've produced quite a few things in the last few years.
Do you have any golden rules that you always try to stick to when you're involved in a production job?
Yeah, never play or sing on anything that I'm producing.
Oh, really?
And I broke the golden rule today. I had to sing background part because it was a 3-part harmony this girl wanted, and there were only 2 of them. And very seldom do I ever play on anything I'm producing, and it's only out of absolute necessity. Absolute necessity. So it's partially, and I try not to push my songs on anybody, because unless it's just absolutely the right song for somebody, I just don't feel that's really my role as a producer. And a lot of people in LA are pushing their songs down their artists' throats for the money, and it's just, I don't know, sometimes it's great song, perfect for the artist, and other times you go, ooh, why did that artist have to cut that song? Well, obviously the producer forced them to. So those are my 2 golden rules, yeah. And also try to always do everything you can analog. Thank you very much.
Oh, good.
Tape is becoming harder and harder to get people to understand the importance of, and the warmth for the type of music that most of the time that I'm involved in. The tape is really the necessity, and it's harder and harder to do that. People are so tuned in with all the automation that it's so quick for them that they don't want to do anything on tape anymore. And I find digital recording sometimes can be very, very abrasive to the eardrum, literally to the eardrum.
Yeah. There is a warmth there, as you say, that you can only get with analog recording.
Well, you know, I was talking to a friend of mine about it recently, and I thought maybe it was my imagination that I felt like my eardrums were being shredded when I go to the movies and I hear these huge speakers with from the soundtracks of movies, and I'm going, why am I in pain? Why am I closing my ears? And I was talking to the guitar player Eric Johnson, who I grew up with. We went to high school together, and I was just asking, because he's such a total sound, he's got a bugaboo about sound and tone and technique and recording, and he says, well, your eardrums are being shredded, literally, from digital recording, and it has to do with frequency and what it does, when you have the difference between analog frequencies and digital frequencies. So that part of that, I think, is a little bit, I tend to go overboard, but there's certain types of music that really suffer from digital recording, and I'm always going to fight for that if I can in the budget. That's what is important to me, is the sound. It's not just getting the record done; it's the sound, and what you finish with is important. So I don't know.
How much of an advantage would you say that it is, being a musician yourself, working as a producer, in terms of being able to relate to the artists you're working with?
Well, the kind of music that I've been producing for the past few years, I think it's important to be a musician. I think it's also important to have empathy for the artist who's trying to get the most out of the cans, trying to understand what they're hearing is not going to sound exactly in the phones the way it does on the tape. It's going to sound better, or it's going to be different. I think that being able to instill in them some trust in you is really important, and if they know you're an artist or you have been an artist, maybe they're going to trust you a little more. They're going to understand. It's not like the check's in the mail or we're going to fix it in the mix. They know that you're empathetic and you understand what they're missing or what they need to intonate to. If they're singing, they need a little more keyboard, a little more bass, whatever it is. I've been there, so I can help them, and I think that's helped me a lot to gain the trust of the artist. Of course, if you don't have the trust of the artist and you're the producer, you're basically hanging out in the wind.
So do you still get a chance to take off your producer's hat and play live?
Oh, yeah. I played a couple of nights ago, actually, with one of my former guitar players, bandmates, Todd Wolf. He was playing here in L.A. and went down with Tom Morgan, played sax, and we played a shuffle and Let It Bleed by the Stones, and every once in a while, but it's very hard. The guy that's Rick Hemmert, who was in the Textones, who's been playing with me for years and years, he moved about an hour north of here, and it's hard to rehearse or hard to put it all together. Everybody's got families and jobs, and it's difficult, But I would listen if you called me right now and said, could you put your guitar on and come down and I'd play? I'd be there in a second. Be there in a minute. What
about recording-wise? Any plans there?
I'm working on a record.
I
stopped working on my own solo record to take this project with this girl, Donia Oxford. She's a piano player, and she's like the Jerry Lee Lewis meets Gladys Knight, Johnny Johnson. I don't know. She's a really great piano player.
Yeah, I was just checking her out on the internet before I came down here today. She sounds fantastic.
Yeah, she's great. She's great, and she's real soulful, and we've got a great band and on the record. And Phil Upchurch just did a couple guitar solos this afternoon on it, and we've got the background singers for Don Henley's background singers, the Waters. They also record with John Fogerty and Bob Seger and everybody else in the world. They're singing backgrounds on it, and Bob Glob plays bass, Don Heffington on drums, and Jake Andrews on guitar. And we've got the Texacali horns on it. It's great. It's turning out really, really good. So I'm really pleased with that.
And just to finish up, Carla, what would be your standard piece of career advice you'd give to a young musician on the way up?
Follow your heart.
Yeah.
It's the only thing to guide you. If you know in your heart that it's the right thing to do, doesn't matter what anybody else says, you got to go that way. Because later on, doesn't matter how much money you've made or how many records you've sold, if you're not happy with your work and you didn't grow from your work, or it wasn't really you, it's going to be hard to, well, it won't be hard to cash the checks, but it certainly will be hard to sleep at night. Just follow your own instincts. You're the one that knows.
That's fantastic advice. Carla, thanks so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up with you.
Well, John, thank you. I'm thrilled and honored that you would call. It's really lovely. I have a friend who an American friend who lives most of the year here, but he used to live most of the year in Melbourne. He's a comedian. You ever heard of Dave Strassman?
Yes. He's
a good buddy of mine.
Yeah, he spends a lot of time down here. Yeah,
he loves Australia. He loves Australia. If he hadn't had a kid and moved to America, I think he'd still be down there. I think he still has a house, actually, an apartment in Melbourne.
Yeah, he's here quite a lot. Yeah, he's a part of the furniture here.
Yeah, well, if you ever run into him, tell him that you did an interview with me, because we've known each other for about 15 years. So I knew him when he was just doing little comedy clubs here in L.A.
Tremendous. Well, you've made my day to let me know that you've got a new album in the works too. That's great news.
And it's going to be a real rock and roll album too. You just wait. It'll be really rocking.
Fantastic.
So. Oh, and Vince Maloney is a good friend of ours as well.
Oh, right. I was a legendary figure down here.
Yeah, we every once in a while we catch a little glimmer of what he's doing, but he's elusive. I don't know what he's up to lately. But he and Saul have been friends for about 35 years, I guess, about 30 years. Oh, did you get the expanded Bee Gees singles? Bee Gees CDs?
No.
You didn't?
No.
He didn't. Yeah, you better talk to somebody at WIA. There's some really cool stuff.
Oh, well, I'll do that for sure.
Yeah, each of the first three have bonus tracks with Vince and stuff on them, so bonus CDs.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, so check it out.
Fantastic. Okay, Carla, thanks again.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
And pass my thanks on the soul, too, for organising the whole thing.
I sure will.
Okay, take care.
Best to you.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.